Welcome, denizens of the night, to Fangs After Dark. Tonight, we'll be opening up the Storytellers Apocrypha, a series of videos that I will be putting out that will help aid players and storytellers in their games of the world of darkness, Vampire the Masquerade, or others, potentially. It will center around tips, tricks, advice, concepts, things of that nature. Tonight, we'll be discussing 5 tips on how to run and play a Kindred for Vampire the Masquerade, and these tips can be applied to any edition, really. They're fairly generalized and can be sprinkled throughout. The list that I'm going to give is not exhaustive, obviously, and of course, your table is always your domain, and we should not infringe on such domains. As per the traditions, correct? You can do what you want at your tables, for whatever is fun for you and your players. But hopefully the tips that I give will aid you in being able to come up with things and think about your characters in a way that will help them exude more ambiance and atmosphere for the themes of World of Darkness. Let us begin, shall we? Tip number 1. Make an individual, not just a vampire. No doubt making a vampire is the first thing that most steer to when creating a character for Vampire the Masquerade. What tends to get lost along the way, though, is the fact that vampires all started off as regular living people, like individuals with day jobs and mundane worries. They weave through their life with not a glimpse of the supernatural world, for the most part. A vampire's personality, skills, quirks, likes, and dislikes should stem from their experience as a mortal first. And then you kind of build off of that and add more things to them as they enter their unlife and the things that happen to them in that unlife. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't include supernatural things in your vampire's backstory when it comes to their mortal years. Obviously, supernatural shit had to have happened for them to become embraced. But you don't have to go super deep with it. You just have to build up some foundational aspects that are easy to build off of to make an interesting and unique character. You want to be a bruiser fighter type guy? Maybe your character was an MMA fighter in his mortal years, or maybe a bouncer. You want to make a hacker tech whiz? Maybe you owned a PC repair shop and you did some hacking as a hobby, or you worked as a white hat hacker for government agencies. There's a lot of things you can do that can really build up your character's skills and their assets and what they could offer to the Kindred world, because we all know that Kindred don't just sire anybody. For the most part, there's always exceptions to the rule, obviously, but you can go as deep or you can not go as deep. But I would always suggest to just dig a little deep and have fun with it. Character creation, I think, is one of the funnest parts of playing any tabletop role-playing game. Creating the concept and delving into who your character is and what they could be. I think it's really important to treasure that ritual of character creation, especially if you're playing in a game like Vampire the Masquerade, which delves deep into personal horror and political drama. Tip number 2. Despite your intentions, the beast will make you a bad guy. One of the main aspects of playing Vampire the Masquerade is that tightrope dance that every Kindred plays with their beast. The beast is a manifestation of monstrous power and predatory behavior that is the nature of your vampirism. And it eventually is going to bubble out in one way or another, whether you fall to an anger frenzy, a fear frenzy, or some other kind of frenzy. Your beast is going to cause your character to do stuff that you don't want them to do. And that's part of the personal horror of Vampire the Masquerade. And a lot of people can get a little turned off by this because they feel like their beast might take away a little agency from their decisions. And to that, I would say, why are you playing Vampire the Masquerade? But at the same time, I can understand people want to play vampires and they have a very specific idea of what a vampire is. They might be new to the game, they don't understand the lore behind it. But this is all something that should be covered in session zeros and things like that so people understand what kind of game they're playing. But as a player who might be on the fence or doesn't really know how they feel about it, the way I look at it is lean into the darker aspects of World of Darkness in Vampire the Masquerade. Your vampire is not a good guy. Hell, most vampires would be lucky if they stack up to the Red Hood from Batman. And we all know how crazy that guy is. At least most of us should. But at the end of the day, Vampire the Masquerade is a game of tragic personal horror. And really, we should all just kind of lean into that. Embrace the darkness in the World of Darkness, I guess. Number 3. Combat is a last resort. For most. Kindred are long-living creatures. With that age comes a propensity to learn how to be careful, calculating, measured, and efficient. Predators in the wild never take on prey they know that they can hurt them badly, and they always have instinctual methods of hunting and killing that are efficient. Have you ever seen a leopard or a mountain lion or a lion or a cheetah or whatever hunt? They're super good at it and they preserve all of their energy. They hunt very specific ways. Kindred vampires are kind of like the same way, except they kind of have to go into this life learning those things as opposed to just instinctually knowing them. And in some cases, the instincts are there because the beast has those instincts. But vampires are really no different than like predators out in the wild. At least those that live long enough to learn those lessons, if you know what I mean. Immortality breeds a covetous compulsion to protect the power that can be cultivated in the ages of time. And as such, vampires, being the titular immortals of the World of Darkness, will avoid open combat unless necessary. So when you are looking at combat, you just have to realize that a lot of vampires don't want to get into it because their life is, while it may be a little bit more sturdy than your typical mortal, vampires can still die fairly easily, especially if they are going up against other supernatural creatures or enemies. And vampires, being as long-lived as they are, they don't want to lose that power or whatever they've accumulated over a long time. Elders especially, that's why they're super paranoid and they go through proxies and they have all these safeguards and yada yada yada. And I'm not saying that you can't have a game that's centered around hard visceral violence, because obviously those games are there and obviously there's an appeal to that. And don't get me wrong, I love a good old street brawl and brouhaha as much as the next guy. But just realize that within the world, most vampires try to steer away from combat as much as possible because it can always get super dirty and super bad really quickly. Masquerade breaches, people getting put to final death for things they didn't know that they did while they were fighting. You know, it can cause a real big mess. It can cause a lot of really awesome conflict and drama, to be sure. But for those that are playing the characters in the world, looking through the eyes of the characters in the world, you realize that combat can cause all sorts of problems.
Number 4. Disciplines. They're not everything. It's no secret that much of the fan base loves the disciplines that we can use in Vampire the Masquerade. Who doesn't love superpowers, right? We've all experienced the catharsis of living out that classic power fantasy, you know, beating down the bad guys, taking life by the haunches and humping it into submission, especially if we can face stomp some doddering old dust fart of an elder, right? They deserve it. The problem is that a lot of players can fall into the trap of allowing their characters to become one-note, flat archetypes solely based off of what vampiric powers they use and how they use them. They create their characters just off of the discipline choice. And for someone new, it can be easy to latch on to that. And that's totally fine if that's an entry point for you, for your character, kind of gives you something to jump off of. But remember that your character is more than the sum of their disciplines. Now, I'm not saying that disciplines aren't important or that you shouldn't utilize them as part of your character's identity or that you can't run a chronicle based off of like discipline, acquisition, and power. Hell, there are clans in which the large portion of their identity stems from their discipline abilities. I'm looking at you, Tremere. Just take care not to let your character become their disciplines. They are so much more than that. But blood sorcery is still dope, and I would love to run a play in a chronicle about that any day. Number 5. Clan stereotypes aren't anathema, just add a little depth to it. Each clan has their own image that has been generally spread throughout Vampire the Masquerade meta and game editions. Bruja are rebel bruisers fighting against the man. Ventru are well put together businessmen looking to make the next big power play. Dorador love art and being around mortals a lot. Tremere are nerds but with blood magic. Sedites equal snake people, etc., you get it. These stereotypes exist for a reason, but they should not define your character. Clans tend to embrace individuals with similar ideologies and perceptions that match the overall clan dynamic for sure. But even then, there's a multitude of varying outlooks that make up the whole. Bruja also are known for their philosophical bents. Ventru can use the power of the organization to destabilize and cause rebellion. Torador can be reclusive and hate being around people and focus on their own little secret passions. Tremere can say screw blood sorcery and serve their clan in some other way or completely go against it because, fuck Tremere. The point is, using a base as a stereotype for a character is all well and good, just make sure to add a little oomph to it and really make it your own. And if you followed the tips that I gave you earlier in this video, you probably will reach that conclusion on your own anyway, and you'll come out with something fresh, unique, and wholly yours. And everyone at your table will love it, and everyone's going to have a blast playing with you. Now, I hope this has been enlightening for you guys. The tips that I gave you here can be for both players and STs because it's really just how to play a Kindred, and that can also spread through all other editions as well. It can be used in LARP, it can be used all over the place. So go into the night with your head held high as you introduce the newest Kindred with an axe to grind. Remember, nothing good ever happens after dark.